And I'm just telling you, when you get hired in that context, all of this bad client behavior goes away. All of this getting paid peanuts goes away because you've established yourself. Damn. I actually wasn't going to do this video today. I had a whole other one planned. I had written out my outline and all that sort of thing. But then I got this email from Andrew and I was responding to him and I was starting to write a whole bunch. And I'm like, I'm just going to do a video on this because I think a lot of freelancers probably deal with this as well. So this is in response to an email that I had written out to my email list. You can go johnmorrisonline.com, by the way, if you want to get on that. And I'd ask, hey, what's stopping you? Like, I've given you a lot of information, but what's stopping you right now? What are you dealing with? And maybe I can help you through it. And so he wrote me back and said, I would say all three items listed below feed into one another. Client lags to deliver content, then has a we need it yesterday mentality after they finally do. Taking on projects that aren't the right fit, so low budget, or they're just not the kind of thing that they want to be doing. Taking on those projects out of financial necessity. And then too much work at times and not enough at others. And he's exactly right. These things all feed into one another because the more work that you get, then the less tolerance you're going to have for bad client behavior. The less tolerance you have for bad client behavior, then the better clients you're going to work with, the better clients you're going to work with, the better portfolio items, the better testimonials, the better that stuff you have, then the better the clients you get in the front door, the better the fit they are for what you do, etc. So it all feeds on itself, but when you're sitting back looking at it, it can be difficult to figure out, where do I stop this cycle? Like, where do I interject and actually start making a difference and doing something different, especially when you are under a financial crunch, when you just need the money and you have to take on the work. And so that's what I want to talk about in this video, how you can go and do that. Like, what do you do at this point? And I'm going to go back to, if you've followed my channel for any amount of time, listened to any of my videos, all of this stuff is going to be stuff that I've talked about before. And I just think this is one of the things that people make a big mistake on, and why I sort of roll my eyes at all the hacks thing, that mentality that seems to exist today. Because oftentimes the things that actually work, they're not new, they're not hacky, they're not necessarily simple or easy or quick or whatever words you want to use. They're actually tend to be a lot of work, but if you do them, they actually work. So what the answer is to this is something I've talked about a ton, and it's sort of boring, but it's the reality of what actually works. And that is two things. First, specializing, and second, content. So what do I mean by that? The way that you check bad client behavior, and also the way you get better clients in the front door, get more clients in the front door, make more per hour, all of those things that you want to do. The way that you do that is by establishing yourself as an authority. But when you sit back and think, well, how do I be an authority? Take me, for example. I'm a freelance web developer. So for me to establish authority as a developer, like, think about what just that phrase developer. There's all sorts of things that fall under that. Hundreds and hundreds of different skills, languages, end result, all of that, things that you could do, etc. So for me to try to establish myself as an authority, as a developer, that's very, very difficult to do. There's people that do it, but you have to write a language from scratch or things like that in order to establish yourself in that regard. So it's very difficult to do, and you don't need to do that in order to be successful as a freelancer. So what did I do? I niched way, 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 way down, all the way down to, and this is why I always use this as an example, because it's so perfect, because most of you probably don't even know what this is. So I build membership sites using WordPress and a plugin called Wishlist Member. If we look at that last one, that plugin, they have maybe 30 to 40,000 customers. I think they're active on roughly 90,000 sites at this point. So if you think of 90,000 sites and all the billions of websites that exist in the world today, there's 90,000 websites currently running this software. It's a tiny, 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 tiny niche, but there's enough work there for me to make a living as a developer in that space. So it's a lot easier for me to establish myself as an authority in that tiny, tiny niche than it is even just WordPress or PHP, and certainly as overall a developer. That's why specializing is so important. It allows you to be able to be an expert, to be an authority, and for me to say and not be completely out of my mind that I'm the best in the world at building those kinds of websites. Now, it's true that there's probably some people out there where it's debatable, but I'm at least not crazy in saying that I think I'm the absolute best in the world at building those particular websites. So specializing is the foundation of being able to establish authority and credibility and be the best in the world at something. That's why it's so important. So you first have to do that in order to be able to establish authority. The second part then, like I said, is content. So how can you be an expert on a topic if you never talk about it? If you produce no content on it? It's nearly impossible. So that's why videos, blog content, social media, all of these things where you actually talk about the topic that you say you're an expert in. You produce videos, you give your opinion, you tell people how to do stuff, all of that. When you do that, that's what establishes you as an expert, so that when a client sees you and ultimately gets to the point of hiring you, they know what they're getting. They've seen your content, they know your opinions, they know how you talk. You don't have to explain any of that to them. They know it, and they see you as an expert, and they're hiring you in that context. And I'm just telling you, when you get hired in that context, all of this bad client behavior goes away. All of this getting paid peanuts goes away because you've established yourself as an expert, as an authority in that particular topic. Now they're asking you what you think. And I'll just tell you this. When you have a bigger online presence than the clients that are hiring you to help them build theirs in some way, at least if you're a developer, like, your world changes. They don't want to mess with you. And then they want to ask you how you did what you did. Like, it's a completely different world that you'll be living in as a freelancer. So again, in order to deal with all of this, the things that I harp on constantly, why I harp on these constantly, specializing and content. That's the answer. You may not like that answer. You may not want to do those things, but that's the answer. That's what solves the problem. And if you don't want to do those things, you're just always going to deal with what you're dealing with, which again, you may not want to hear, but that's the truth. And that's all I'm going to ever give you, is what I see as the truth.